Ding dong YouTube, welcome back to the channel. I'm the Jobless Coder, and today I'm going to explain to you why it is that the Canadian federal budget that is going to be presented on Tuesday this week and debated on Wednesday, it necessarily must fail, or it will mean the end of this country. But on the flip side, an election could also trigger the end of this country. So Canadians, we're kind of stuck between a rock and a hard place right now. As you can tell, I'm going to be making a series of videos on this specific topic, the Canadian economy, over the next foreseeable future, because I have a plan and a solution to the economy that I've been devising and working on since May. There's been a lot of months put into this effort to write a budget prematurely and ahead of schedule that can be presented when I knew back in May that the budget that would be presented now, or whenever in the future that they did decide to present the budget, it necessarily needs to fail. Because I wrote a thesis, I can prove it mathematically, I can prove it economically, and the budget is not addressing the root cause of the issue. In the previous video, I went through a whole series of analysis explaining the root cause of the issue being the fact that there's no outside investment coming into the country. And that's fundamentally the problem. All investment, all business opportunity in the country is internally circulating revenue generated by tax dollars. And in the diagram, there is exponential extraction of wealth out, both for humanitarian aid on the tax dollar side and also people doing tourism outside of the country. So, today I'm going to explain, first of all, why the budget needs to fail, why I think the budget is going to fail, and the solution that I have as a result of that. I'm also going to get into some math. So I'm sorry, Canadians. I know you don't understand math and numbers, and you just don't. And I'll prove it. I'll show you tangible examples in this video that demonstrate how little Canadians actually understand math. And when I explain the math to you, hopefully, I'm hoping people will understand my frame of view, my reference point, and why it is that I've been harping on this since May. This is not news to me. It's news to Canadians because we were just told 2 weeks ago that our country is going to be bankrupt. And then we were told 2 days ago, practically, that we need to buckle up our bootstraps by the Bank of Canada, telling us to prepare for the worst. I've known since May, so I've been planning. And the plan is going to take numerous hours worth of video content to outline and explain, because there's a lot of moving pieces, a lot of components, a lot of theoretical knowledge that needs to be digested to understand the plan. And this plan has been devised since May. So we've had months of planning that have been put into this, and it's going to require hours worth of video content. So I'm going to be spreading it out over the next little bit here. Probably tomorrow I'll actually go through item by item on the budget that I have written and explain to you the rationale behind it, the reason why I picked the price point that I did for that particular project, and how I believe that it could provide value proposition to American investors, aka Disney. So, we're going to get started by diving into some news stories, because this is recent, literally. It just came out last night, October 31st. This news article reads, "The budget of 2025 must create jobs by investing in people and infrastructure, not cuts and corporate giveaways." Coming from Ottawa. As workers and communities face growing uncertainty from Trump's trade war, inflation, and risk of affordability crisis, Canada's unions are calling on the federal government to use the budget of 2025 to invest in people, infrastructure, not cuts and corporate giveaways. Workers are doing their part to hold this country together. Our elbows are up, but they're being squeezed from every direction, says B.A. Brusky, the president of Canada Labour Congress. The budget must invest in people and infrastructure. I was telling people back in May that Canada's infrastructure is collapsing, and I knew this as recently as a year prior, because when I was living in Calgary, there was a massive water shortage last year in the city of Calgary in the summer during the stampede because the infrastructure is failing. Welcome to the USSR, Canada. This is what happens when infrastructure collapses and buildings deteriorate and water pipelines from the 70s burst and, an entire city is put out with water for, 2 weeks before the stampede, 2 weeks after the stampede. They made sure to get the water during the stampede. We need infrastructure. And this is something that I was right about, that I was telling people back in May. We need infrastructure. It says, Canada's unions are using the federal government to launch a new wave of public investment focused on shovel-ready municipal and provincial projects. Great. Get people with their boots on and their hard hats on, and they better be building shit to build this country, including housing, schools, transportation, public health, and childcare. This is why the budget needs to fail, or the country is going to end. And I'm going to tell you why. These investments must come with strings attached, says Bousquet. They must create good union jobs, be community supporting, use Canadian procurement, and guarantee that the jobs stay in Canada for the long term. Budget 2025 should also build the next generation of public infrastructure. Again, infrastructure, that word keeps coming up. I had termed this massive plan of mine that I was working on back in May the infrastructure budget, the Disney infrastructure moonshot development project for Canada 2025. Public infrastructure. But this right here, what comes next, is the problem, because they're defining infrastructure as including housing, transit, energy, early learning, and childcare. And up here, they're defining it as housing, schools, transportation, public health care, and childcare. Well, what's the problem? You say, that's infrastructure, right? We need housing, we need schools, we need transportation. Okay? This is why the budget needs to fail. We come back to the thesis that I ran you through yesterday. And for those that didn't watch the video yesterday, I'll give you just a quick rundown of this diagram because I went over it for like 20 minutes in the previous video. So I'll do a quick rundown. The government of Canada is writing a budget. They're going to allocate a certain amount of the funds back into themselves for their wages and their salaries. They're going to allocate to the employers. They send the money to the employers through grants. Your boss probably, very likely is getting the money that he uses to pay you from the government through a grant. They pay the employers or the workers, and then taxes go back into the system. The workers spend their money in shopping and retail, and the taxes from that go back into the system. They will also allocate money to welfare, and the welfare recipients will also spend their money in shopping and retail, which completes this circular diagram. The workers and the welfare recipients are going to spend whatever other money they have on what? What do they do? Fun shit. Tourism. Fun. We have nothing here to do for fun. Tourism money goes back into the government of Canada, and also humanitarian aid to other countries outside. This is money taken out. Canadians, of their own free will, take the money out to America on, guess what? Disney. I don't want to have to say it a billion times, but I will if I have to. Disney. Disney. Bold. Big, bold letters. So, how do we get money from Disney back up here? This is how we can do it. Because Canadians travel, potentially, to some of these attractions. Americans travel to none of them. So all of the money that comes into tourism comes from Canadian workers and welfare recipients living in Canada. It does not come from down here. Money into tourism does not come from Disney or America up into our system. So, with money being extracted down south and money being extracted out east, where does new money enter the system? Canada's number one economy, the number one industry, is the sale of resources. Well, guess what? The sale of resources is not sustaining this. We need other things in the country for people to invest in. Tourism. Fun shit. Canada doesn't have fun shit. At least not fun enough to convince Americans to come up here. Because guess what? Guess what? They don't even come to the Calgary Stampede. And it is the biggest attraction in Alberta yearly. Did you know that we have a NASCAR track in Wetaskiwin? It's the only NASCAR track outside of America. And it's a tiny dirt strip that produces very little revenue. The NASCAR tracks in America produce a whole shit ton of revenue. Have you seen their campgrounds? There's like 10,000 RVs every single weekend in there. And they're all paying like, thousands of dollars per camping spot. NASCAR? We got NASCAR here. Did you even know that? If you live in Alberta, did you know that we have a NASCAR track here in Alberta? So, there's no new money coming into the system. This, back to the budget. What are they defining as infrastructure? Housing. Okay. Who uses the houses? Who pays the rent? Who pays the property tax? Canadians who live in the houses. The schools are government funded. The schools support Canadian children. Transportation is public, so it supports anyone. Anyone that comes to the city, you will use a bus or taxi or whatever. So this is maybe the only one that could benefit, but guess what? Americans aren't vacationing up here to use our bus lines. They want some reason to come here, but we don't have any, because this NASCAR track is not as impressive as what they have down here. They have Disney and NASCAR. And a laundry list of 100 other reasons why America is the best. Period. So, how do you get new money into the system if the sale of resources doesn't work? Because guess what? Trees exist everywhere on the planet. Other countries have water. Other countries have oil. Does America get its oil from here? From Alberta? No. They buy their oil from the Middle East. There's copper mines in Mexico. Money. We need money. And the only money for game studios, my industry, is the Canada Media Grant. So, now you understand the diagram, I'm going to update it with the new and relevant information from this news article. That the housing, the school, transportation, public health, and childcare will be funded, but there's no mention of tourism. So, we'll add another box in here. And I say, internally used. Why is that important? Because this diagram is complete. The internally used infrastructure pays taxes to Canada. The government of Canada uses those tax dollars to build the infrastructure in the first place. The workers and the welfare recipients use the infrastructure. Americans do not use the infrastructure. Maybe possibly the bus lines, but only if they come to Calgary. And they don't come up here for anything, ever. So, internally used infrastructure, the diagram is just as tightly wound with no solution. If you're not going to provide me a solution that actually provides money into the country, the budget needs to fail. Even if the Conservatives approve, even if they approve of whatever infrastructure gets decided on, and they sign their name on the bill, the system doesn't last forever when the money gets extracted out here and out here, but not coming in through here. So, how do we solve that? Disney equals money. Period. I don't care how they hurt you. I don't care how many movies they've destroyed. I don't care how woke they are. Disney equals money. Now, they're not the only American company, and we will get into some others in the course of this conversation in this video. So, we will go back to here. We're getting infrastructure in Calgary. Did you know that we're getting our brand new replacement for the Saddle Dome that was already there? The Saddle Dome is this building. It's where the NHL games happen between the Calgary Flames and whatever other team they're playing. This is one tourism venue that does bring Americans up here, but they don't come here for this building. They come here to see the Calgary Flames play the Tampa Bay or whatever. Or, whoever they're playing. An American team comes up, American fans come up with them. And that will generate revenue, some very small amount of revenue this direction. From this building. So it makes sense that we should improve upon it. Or does it? What is the value proposition of an infrastructure development project to replace what already exists? Are Americans liquidating their bank accounts to come on vacation because they want to tour the new building that we build? No. Their incentive is not the building. Their incentive is the hockey game. So if replacing this building with this building doesn't alter the behavior of Americans, how do you get money going this way? This looks like a really good infrastructure project because it's giving people work and there's a lot of money being invested into it, and it's going to grow the asset value of the city overall. But what's the value proposition? How are you going to improve upon the number of people coming to the stadium by making the stadium better? They don't come here because the stadium, or because of the quality of the stadium. They come here because of the players and the teams. And so if the Calgary Flames just get, booted out in the first round of the season, then that revenue stream is now liable. That revenue stream is not reliable. It's liable to the performance of the players. And that's anyone's guess because sports betting is a thing. So, how much is this costing? The total cost of the Scotia Place project is $1.2 billion, which is being split between, these are the key details, the City of Calgary, Calgary Sport, and the Government of Alberta. Again, government-sponsored. Money from the government going into tourism. What's the tourism venue in this case? It's the replacement of the Calgary Saddle Dome. So now, we haven't actually solved the equation. The diagram is just as messy as it was before, only now it's a bit more granular because we have extra boxes, but it doesn't explain to me, the voter, the Canadian citizen, where is this arrow? This arrow here doesn't exist. Bye-bye. The money, the $1.2 billion that is being allocated for this is coming from city taxes in Calgary, Alberta taxes in the government, and a Calgary Sports and Entertainment Corporation. Well, is the Calgary Sports and Entertainment Corporation, as a private entity, getting their revenue from outside of the country? Potentially. I don't know their entire business model. Potentially, of the three people in this equation, the City of Calgary, the Government of Alberta, and this one minuscule corporation in Calgary, this is the only one that's a private investor. Why is the NHL not footing the bill for this? The NHL is worth approximately $67 billion, and Canadians are worth zero in 12 months from now, according to the finance minister. So if we're worth zero, and they're worth $67 billion, why are Canadian taxpayers footing the bill for this? When shit like this gets built in America, massive stadiums and such, it's because there's private investing behind the scenes, and it doesn't come as a burden on the taxpayer. 100% of everything. And remember what I said in my last video. I talk in generalizations, so not literally 100%, but 100% of business gets their money from the government and tax rebates and grants and infrastructure development projects like this. This does not solve this. So, if the NHL, which I believe is an American-based corporation, is worth this much money, why are they not investing it in their arena? Nobody else uses this except for, some Comic Cons and stuff. The sports that get played here are not baseball. The sports that get played here are not cricket. It's hockey. So, if the hockey arena wants to be developed and improved upon, then the hockey company should be paying for it. Why are Canadians footing the bill? You want to talk about another company? Okay. How much money does Walmart make in Canada? Right? Walmart Canada reported net sales of $6.3 billion. This is one of the wealthiest companies on planet Earth. Why is the Canadian taxpayer subsidizing this company and all of their employees at the rate of 30% to new immigrants? That's why Canadians can't get a job, is because the business gets a 30% deduction on the paycheck that they have to send to their employees if they hire an immigrant over a citizen. If you do math, and you can do math, and you can put 2 and 2 together, this is why Canadians don't understand money or math. Because if they did, this would be obvious. Why are we paying 30% of our taxes, or sorry, not our taxes, 30% of the paycheck for the employees? For this company, it's coming from the taxpayer. What are we doing? This is crazy. So, come back over here. Come over here. So, I'm gonna jump over to here. They have an itemized breakdown list of everything starting on October 31st. This is not the budget. This is what politicians have alluded to will be in the budget. $77 million over 4 years for Canada Revenue Agency to address a problem with Canadian Trucker Alliance. Okay, that's a Canadian issue, so it doesn't bring new money in. The Liberal government says the budget will launder a foreign credential recognition action fund by directing $97 million over 5 years from existing resources. This is supposed to help immigrants convert their qualifications from other countries and other schools into the Canadian equivalent. So, again, how does this bring new money in? This woman, Champagne, the minister, the woman of gender equity, Rachel Valdez, says the budget will include $660 million over 5 years and $132 million after that for the Department of Women and Gender Equality. The government says that funding will go towards supporting women participation in leadership roles, providing security for LGBT communities during Pride events, and supporting crisis hotlines for gender-based violent research. I'll come back to this number. I want you to pay attention to that number, $660 million. There's another $75 million down here that's been allocated, or not allocated, talked about. None of this is official. This is what politicians have said. $75 million over 3 years to boost an apprenticeship training program focused on building the trades. Okay, that's great for the trades, I guess. And that's another thing too. I'm not seeing anything in here for me. And so I don't support the budget at all. There's literally nothing in, and I'm a gay man. LGBT 660. Why would I be upset? I'm a gay man. I'll tell you why in a sec. So down here, this is why I'm upset. Because the Liberal government is going to fund at the tune of $617 million over over the next, how is this many years? 5 years. They're going to hire an additional 1,000 border agents. So if the cost of that is $617 million and the cost of this is $660 million, you understand that 660, yes, is a larger number than 617. That means the government is prioritizing this more than this. That's the problem right here. This number here, for whatever the fuck this is that probably can't be defined, women and gender equity, whatever the fuck, 606, this should be $20 million. 20 at most million dollars. And then put the remaining 600 million into something else, building industry and infrastructure instead of diversity quotas. The reason I have an issue with this, even as an LGBT man that could benefit from maybe some of the things that come of this, the reason I have an issue of this is of everything in the list that's been talked about, this is the singular largest. So we're going into potential bankruptcy here as a nation, and we're prioritizing this as our number one priority. Well, if this is our number one priority, then you better be able to damn well explain to me how this grows. This better grow into 50 trillion, or trillion, 50 billion. You know, over the next 20 years, I want to see this investment. This is an investment, okay? This is not a handout. This is an investment. How is this investment in women and gender studies going to grow into a $1 billion business revenue model? It's not. It may, and I'll give them that chance if they can tell me then an idea. You tell me, Rishi Valdez, how do you plan to take this and grow the economy? You have the most money of anyone, anywhere, for anything on this list, so you better have the best goddamn idea. Okay? That's how this works. If we're going to give you the most money, you better produce the most money as a result of it. And I want to learn how $660 million in equity studies is going to improve the economy over time, because this is not a handout. This is an investment from the government. So I found a page that actually outlines it. People think this is all about Pride. It's not. Because if you come down here, it says that the funding for Pride is $7.5 million over 5 years. That's $1.5 million every year with $1.5 million ongoing. That's relatively low, actually. If you spend $1.5 million across the entire nation doing Pride, and that means all the different cities, now you have to take that and break it down per city. So now each city is only getting, maybe $50,000, $60,000. Well, paint's expensive and you have to hire people and there's all sorts of other things that go on. Now, should this be our number one priority when we're going to starve because there's no food? No, absolutely not. And you can take that from a gay conservative, that my fundamental need and access to food should be prioritized over my sexual desires. Because, why? One is inherently dependent on the other. You can live without sex, you cannot live without food. Period. End of story. It shouldn't be that complicated. So, if we're facing that level of uncertainty, why is this being funded at all? Take it out. Take it out. And I want to hear how $660 million over 5 years is going to turn into a $1 billion business model. Because that's, what is that, 5%? That's 5% of what I'm asking for the entire $10 million budget. So, you don't need $500 million for this shit. There's another reason the budget is going to fail. Because it warns federal budget could lead to 70,000 job cuts in the public service. This is something the NDP is not going to support or get behind. They're the Labour Party. They're not going to stand for 70,000 job cuts. Well, here's the situation as it stands. Mark Carney does not have a majority government. What does that mean? He needs to get other people from other parties to support the bill for it to pass. And with 100% of the Conservatives voting no, and 100% of the NDP voting no, unless they've gone and lost their minds, the only people left other than Elizabeth May and her one seat on the Green Party seat, is the Bloc Québécois. Well, the only thing on this list more expensive on the budget than this is the $800 million of extortion funds out to Quebec for carbon rebate repayments. Everything else on the list is less, significantly less than this number, 660 million, and then Quebec is demanding another $800 million on top of it. For what? Business, industry, construction, infrastructure? No, handouts, so that the system can continue to extract wealth out until it eventually collapses and fails. There's a reason American businesses are pulling out. Canadians can't do math. Do you understand how many people 70,000 is? Do you understand how worried you should be right now, right? You should be terrified over this number. And if it's not terrifying you, it's because you can't do math. What do I mean by that? How many people does Walmart employ in Canada? Walmart employs more than 100,000 people in Canada. So imagine this in your mind, right? Imagine this hypothetical scenario in your right? 70% of all Walmart employees wake up unemployed tomorrow. Can you imagine the absolute insanity and chaos that's going to happen if that many people are unemployed tomorrow? That's the equivalent, 70,000 people unemployed the next day. That's the equivalent of if 70% of the people working at Walmart just ended up in the unemployment line overnight. If this budget passes, it is going to destroy the country because 70,000 is a big-ass number. And Americans are the only people that seem to understand big-ass numbers because they're the only people that have big-ass businesses. Canadian businesses don't generate billions. A few million here and there. That's it. Walmart, an American company, is the largest employer in Canada too. So, if the largest employer in the nation lost 70% of its workforce, guess what? Guess who's the largest employer in Canada? Technically, the government. The federal government, public service workers, this budget is going to cause a 70% unemployment rate in the government. If the government of Canada employed 100,000 people. So, how many public sector workers are in Canada? Welcome to math. This is how it works. There's 4.4 million public sector workers. So we do 70,000 divided by 4. Okay. 1.5%. So you're telling me that the federal budget is going to require that 1.5% of the people employed by the government become unemployed? This is ridiculous. You can't run a country long term, at least not with any longevity in it, if this is how you operate. So, you want to do some more math? I'm going to explain to you in some really simple basic terms why it is that Canadian businesses don't want to start, or Canadian entrepreneurs don't want to start their business in Canada, and they're looking to take their business in America. And businesses that are already established here, like manufacturing cars, for example, wink wink, whatever's happening out in Ontario with the industrial sector out there, all of Canada industry is based on American business. Walmart's not a Canadian company. When Canadians buy the product in Walmart and the money gets sent to the Walmart headquarters down south, where it's located in America, that's money extracted out. There's no Canadian equivalent at the level of Walmart inside of Canada. It's an American company. So you can't win a trade war against the people who pay your paycheck. It's that simple. Trump is not the enemy. America is not the enemy. the tax system is, because Gary Vaynerchuk sat in front of 900 Canadians and explained it to us. So this is how it works, right? I work in game development. If I make a game and I sell it at a retail price of $10 on Steam's store, well, guess what? Steam takes a 30% cut of all revenue, and that is industry standard across the board for everything technology related. Why is that number important? 30%. Because that's a tax to Steam on what is otherwise the value of the product that I created. But Steam justifies that because they're providing the servers that host the game, they're providing the infrastructure that allows you to download the game and comment on it and review it and all of that. So they are providing me a service for that $30. Or for that $3 of the game sale goes to providing the service and the infrastructure that Steam provides me to sell. But this is $7. This is where the problem comes in. $7 to Canadian dollars. Now this is a direct conversion. It's not going to include bank fees because each individual bank is going to set their own fee. So we'll take $9.84. If I sell one game on the Steam store for $10 and then I get converted back into Canadian dollars, let's say there's a 7% conversion rate. So we take 9.84 times 93. 93% is what you get to keep after the conversion rate is applied. This is your Canadian value, $9.15 that you put in your pocket in Canadian dollars after you have done that. But here's the problem. You live in Canada and you work in Canada. So now you've collected income. You have to pay income tax on this. This is the number you pay income tax on, not this. Not the $10, you pay the income tax on the $7 when you put it in your pocket as income. So we're going to go with 0.65. Why 0.65? Because I work in tech. Tech happens to be in a higher tax bracket. It's somewhere within the 30 to 40% range, which means I get to keep, of this money that I put into my pocket, 65% of that in Canadian dollars. So now I have less than 6 Canadian dollars left from a game that I sold for $10. But it gets even better than that, right? So now, after I've paid my taxes to the government and to Steam, I'm paying taxes twice, once here to Steam and once here to the government of Canada. I'm left with less than $6 on a game that costs 10. But, here's the kicker. This is 6 Canadian dollars, right? So now, if I want to take this money and save up for a vacation down to Disney, to America, because I have to go to America, there's no Disneyland alternative option in Canada. I can't just travel to the Disneyland here and use Canadian dollars. No, it has to be American dollars. So, in the previous video, I mentioned Canadians liquidating their bank accounts to go down for Disney and it taking, 5 or 6 years to save for a family to go for a one-time trip. This is the reason why. Because now I take this money that I profited from the game and I'm going to convert it back again to US dollars. So now the conversion fee gets applied again on the conversion rate back. So we'll take this 4.23 and we'll do that 93% to get the 7% bank fees. So now I'm left with less than $4 that I actually put into my pocket. So if you followed this process, you can understand why it is that I've been telling Canadians for years that America has better economics. Because after all of the taxes and the tariffs and the fees applied on both sides back and forth, this is the first moment at any point in this process that I have US dollars in my pocket. I can't just take the US dollars from Steam and just put it in my bank in US dollars. It gets converted to Canadian and then taxed and then converted back and then taxed and feed on that too. So now I have $4 that I have of value for a product that I created that actually cost 10. So let's say, and this is again too, right? So if I want to go to Disney and buy a $40 plushie in the gift shop, and there's a 10% sales tax that's applied to that, so the plushie cost $44, and I have saved $4. So we'll put this number here, we'll come over here, we'll copy this number here, put it over here, ding dong doom, boom, look at that. I now need to sell 12, because this is more than 11, so this has to be rounded up, necessarily, 12. I have to sell 12 video games valued, what's the value of the video game? $10. So we go $10 times 12. So I've now produced, for my labor and my hard work, $120 worth of value. I've sold 12 games at $10 each. There's $120 worth of value. What do I get? I get a $44 plushie. This is why it's a problem. Because this is the problem, this number right here. 3.66%. So is Steam putting in the hard work and the effort to produce the game that I sell? No. I'm the one busting my ass to get it done. Is the government of Canada doing anything to help? No, because there's not one single grant for game studios. We have to apply and compete with literally everyone else in Canada for this. The Canada Media Grant is the only source of funding for game studios in the country. There is no outside investors that come up here, and this is the reason why tech in Canada has never grown and never will. Because across the board, every single tech company, it doesn't matter whether it's Steam or if you make an iPhone app on the Apple Store, they charge 30%. If you sell it on the Android Store, they charge 30%. If you put ads on it and you use an AdMob account, then there's a 30% deduction on the revenue generated from the ads. 30% in tech across the board. So in my industry, I have to pay that to the American companies. Tax number one. But I also collect income as a result of the conversion and deposit of this money into my bank account on the flip side. So now I get tax number 2 to the government of Canada. So between my hard work and them standing there with their hands out, I am the CEO of the company. But if I only get to retain 36% of the value of the shit that I'm producing, am I actually the CEO at all? This is why businesses don't want to operate in Canada. Why would I bust my ass so someone else can make 64%, 64% of the value that I'm producing, where I keep 36%. 37, I guess, if you round it up. So if I don't have more than 51% of the value in the stuff that I'm creating, then I am being extorted and stolen from. And to prove that, I'm going to show you a video. This is a very prolific video. I think everyone, everywhere in the country needs to watch this video right now and go buy Atlas Shrugged. Because this book is prolific. And it is telling us what is happening right now in the country. This book, for some context and backstory behind it, Atlas Shrugged was written by Ayn Rand. Who is Ayn Rand? She is the founder of a philosophy known as objectivism. Here's why objectivism works and why the collective socialist mentality fails. Because in this book that she wrote, a fictional book where a fictional America turns communist, it tells the story of what happens to all the business owners that get caught up in the shit in between and the crossfires. And the entire book is about each individual business owner and their behaviors and actions and how they cope with this situation. One business owner decides to sabotage his own companies because he realizes that if he's only going to keep in a socialist system 36% of the value of the stuff he's creating, that he's going to go scorched earth and destroy it all before it can get taken. He's Francisco d'Anconia, the copper miner. destroyed every last one of his businesses and ran it into the ground on purpose. Why would he do that on purpose? Well, go read the book. The entire first third of this book deals with that plot point. Why would this businessman be running his businesses into the ground when he was super hyper successful before? Because he understands math and decided that I don't want to work for 36% of the value, and I'm not going to work and let other people take the remaining 64%, so I'm going to just destroy it all. That was his mentality. This other business owner that we're about to see, his mentality was to do the business anyways, and fuck the system and the law, because the law was invented 5 seconds ago, and he just said, I'm not going to abide by it, so they put him on trial. This is Atlas Shrugged Part 2, the trial of Hank Rearden. So, there you have it. If the public good demand that I get nothing for my labors, if the public good demand that I get nothing...
Zero atmosphere.
Oh, shit.
Pressurized.
Okay. If the public good demands that I get nothing for my labors, then I say public good be damned. Exactly as Hank Rearden stated it in the video that we just watched. So if I'm only going to make 37% of the value of what I'm working towards, why am I working towards it? I've been kind of stuck between a rock and a hard place lately where I feel the need to do more videos and talk about this Disney thing, because it's like, well, I'm working on a game right now, and it's a game that could potentially have legitimate market value to it, something that I've never produced at all at any point in my life before, something with market value. If the game does well, I'm being victimized now, because I will know that I'm only getting 36% of the value that I've created. Here's why businesses in America work, at least in tech, at least in my industry, but they do not in Canada. We'll do the same calculation now for an American citizen, an American game developer. They sell the same game for $10. They're charged the same rate, 30% from Steam, but they pocket $7 into their pocket. There's no fees or conversion fees, and then they pay their income tax on the $7. So we'll say 85. Let's say they're in a good state and the income tax is 15%. So now, you see the numbers? What's the difference? What's the difference between the numbers? If I take this number that I keep in my pocket after taxes and fees and everything else, and I divide by this number, welcome to math. I now keep and retain 59.5% of the value that I have created. It is majority share. It is over 51%. I am the CEO. Over here in Canada, I'm not the CEO. Not mathematically speaking, not technically speaking, I am. Mathematically speaking, I'm not, because someone else, some amalgamation of bank fees, Canadian taxes, and Steam account fees, some amalgamation of the three owns 51% majority of the company. In this case, 63. They own 63% of the company. I own 36. Who's doing the work? Are they building the games for me? Or am I building the games? I'm building the games. And if I'm building the games, then I want to keep $5.95 on every game sold at a $10 rate. And then they can take that same $5.95 and travel to Disney and buy the same $44 plushie. I have 5.95, okay. Look at that. Wow. 8 games. So for me to be living in Canada, working in Canada, building games that get distributed on an American tech platform because it's the only one. Let's take, I told you right before, 12 games. I needed to sell 12 games to get a $44 plushie. Well, guess what? An American running the same business, doing the exact same game, spending the exact same money on all of the employees, and the time it takes to make the game is identical. It's like two alternative universes. Universe 1, you're making the game in Canada. Universe 2, you're making the game in America. In the universe where you're making the game in America, guess what? 12 divided by 8. Because this number over here is greater than 7, but you can't sell half a game, so therefore it must necessarily be rounded up. So an American to get a $44 plushie at Disney needs to sell 8 copies of their game, whereas I need to sell 12, which means I now have to work 50% harder for the same stuff. I have to work 50% longer, 50% more hours, 50% more time, 50% more effort, 50% more of everything to make the exact same value dollar equivalent as an American. I don't want to do that. I want to move out. The problem is that I'm stuck with Americans on the other side that are making their visa system impossible to get in for businesses that are starting. If you're starting, they don't want you. If you got millions of dollars, bring it down here, we'll take you. Well, my business hasn't gotten there yet, and it's not going to get there because before it gets there, the country will be bankrupt. So I'm like sitting here with a game that's nearly almost complete, and I'm like, I guess I put it out and just accept it. But I did find a loophole, and this is the loophole I'm operating under. Let me go back over here. Steam payout threshold. This is the loophole. You want to hear it? This is how I have avoided paying taxes on the revenue for my games legally. Because Steam sets a $100 threshold in that revenue. But there's an internal system on the back end where you can fluctuate that number up and down. It's like a drop-down list. And the highest possible value that you can keep it at is $1,000. So, I'm currently sitting on 195 American dollars for game sales from my previous game sales for the Halloween game that I made a couple years ago. That's 195 US dollars. So we'll convert it to CAD. We'll do the exact same calculations as we did before. So we'll do this. We're going to do a 93% for the conversion fee. So this is the Canadian dollars. And then we'll do this. 65% after 35% taxes. So we'll do this. And then we'll put here CAD back to USD. We're going to take this number here. And then we're going to apply the conversion fee back of 7%. So this is the number here. So I might have messed that up. I think I did. Let me go back here. I think I messed that up. I'll just start again. So we'll do 195 USD to CAD. Take this number, convert it with the 7% conversion fee. Take this, Canadians tax is then the next step that gets applied. So I retain 65% of the value. This is what I keep in Canadian dollars. And then I put it back into US dollars. And then we'll do this. We'll do the conversion fee back, 93% US dollars. No, I didn't do that. I had it right the first time. Okay, so why is this important? Because I have 195 US dollars sitting in my Steam account right now. And if I was to do this process where I put it into my bank account and then convert it back into American dollars, which is what it originally began as, the moment that American dollars hit my pocket, I have 109. So then we take this and go minus 195. So it will cost me. It will be an 85 US dollar loss to me if I take the money out. And that's the loophole to not paying taxes, is because I discovered that so long as you keep less than 1,000 US dollars in the account, it'll just sit there indefinitely because it is my money and Steam adheres to that. It's my game. I've sold it. Steam will hold on to that for as long as it takes to either hit this threshold or the one that I set. And because the one I set's at 1,000 US dollars, so long as the profit from the games that I've made, and it has been less than 1,000 US dollars in total over the course of my lifetime, so long as it's less than 1,000 US dollars, I can treat the Steam account like a bank account and just hold it there. If I absolutely need the money, I can withdraw it out. But I just hold it there indefinitely. Because I know the moment it crosses 1,000 US dollars, I'm going to get financially fucked. Because then it becomes automatic. and the charge comes to the bank account, and all of this shit's going to take place automatically because I live in Canada and my business is not registered in America. So I don't want to get successful, really, because I want to keep that $195 that I have and whatever other. Now, if you're making thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars every month, it's not an issue. But if you're budgeting nickels and dimes and pennies, losing $85 on a transaction process back and forth and taxes, fees, and everything else in between, 85 US dollars, that's like half of the value of what I had produced in the first place just evaporated into thin air. Poof, it's gone. So this is the reason why businesses do not want to operate in Canada, period. And whining and complaining and bitching and demanding handouts and calling the Orange Man Hitler is not going to fix the problem because you're not giving them a value proposition. Gary Vaynerchuk, an American businessman, sat in front of 900 Canadians in May and said to create American-style investment opportunities and also to fix the tax code. You want to know how you fix the tax code? Here's how you can do it. Okay? So, proposal 4. How do the taxes work when we get to Disneyland up here in the first place? So, Disney, nope, not that. What do I want? There was another tab over here I had. Nope, not that one. Here we go, right? This is exactly it, right? So, this is the budget 2025 to invest in Canadian workers. It says here, first, we're going to train the newest generation of Canadian builders. Budget 2025 will expand upon the union training and innovation program. It'll boost union-based apprenticeship training and red seal trades. Again, more trades, more trades. All they want is trades and resources. They don't want tech, and ensure there are Canadian workers to build majority of infrastructure and million more homes across the country. So now we've mentioned trades and homes. I've not seen one mention in here up and down about tech. Second, to recognize a vital role of personal support workers, Budget 2025 will include a temporary 5-year personal support worker tax credit. Eligible workers will be able to claim a refundable tax equivalent to 5% of their eligible earnings, providing support of up to $1,100 per year. Third, this point right here is why I think the budget necessarily must fail. Because it says, to protect workers' rights, promote labor mobility, strengthen competition, the upcoming budget will propose an amendment to the Canada Labour Code to restrict the use of non-compete agreements in employment contracts for federal businesses. Why would they want to do that? Restrict the use of non-compete. What does a non-compete agreement prevent you from doing? It prevents you from working for multiple companies who use very similar industry secrets and standards. So if you develop something like an algorithm for one company, it becomes their property. You don't just take it to the next company, because unlike certain industries, tech is not an industry you can just remove from your brain. If you've invented the algorithm at one place, you know that algorithm somewhere else. It's there in your brain. Why would they be wanting to remove or restrict the use of non-compete agreements? What does that mean? More jobs. 2 jobs now. Or 3. Or 4. Are you going to work 5 jobs to pay your bills if you have to? Better buckle up your bootstraps and go up, get a job. That's what everyone keeps telling me. Just stop asking for handouts and get a job. I'm not asking for handouts. I'm asking for investment and for Canadians to understand math. In employment contracts for federally regulated businesses, this will empower workers to move more freely in a higher paying career or start their own business. Well, isn't that fantastic? Isn't that just freaking fantastic? We just went through like an hour-long rant where I demonstrated to you why Canadians don't want to start businesses here. Because we only keep 36% of the value of the shit that the business produces. But the same business making the same stuff at the same wages and cost and everything else in between in America keeps 59% of the asset that they have produced. The business owner, the CEO, 51 majority share. Over here in Canada, you don't actually own the business you own. It's owned by an amalgamation of bank fees, Canadian taxes, and steam cuts. It's that simple. So if you're wanting to understand how this is going to break down over the next week and politicians are going to be in the political blood sport arena on Wednesday to debate this, you need to understand some of this information beforehand. You need to understand how many people 70,000 is and compare it mentally in your head to the total number of Walmart employees. So, solution? How do you fix the tax code? By implementing the policy in reverse. What does that mean? If we're going to build a Disneyland here in Canada, then it will be taxed. They will not pay land taxes. It will be the same negotiation that got them the land for free and the electricity and power and water and all the utilities for free in Florida. Because Disney produces money for other companies within the economy. Remember what I said yesterday? Anything on this list within a 300-mile radius of a Disneyland park would benefit from having a Disneyland park 1 hour south of Calgary. But Canada doesn't want that. Why? Because Disney is an American company. But they don't tell me who they work for. Do you work for Walmart? American. Do you work for McDonald's? American. Wendy's? American. We'll go down the list. In order to get money into this stuff that exists over here, you need to get something to attract, and it's not attracting Disney. You put a Disney 1 hour south of Calgary, and this stuff benefits too, and it will grow. So, you give Disney the land tax free. I don't care how many politicians get up in a tizzy over that. I don't care how much red tape has to be burned to make it happen. You give Disney the land tax-free. And then the tax negotiation that happens as a result of that, once they're operational, is that there will be a 30% across-the-board flat tax on who? Or what? Where's the tax money coming from? Not the employees. The employees who work for Disney will get 0 income taxes deducted. 0. I'll tell you why. Because the tax money generated from Disney to the tune of 30% per ticket sale and merchandise sale. So if the Disneyland sells a $44 plushie up here in Canada, guess what? We retain 30% of that value. Yes, the money for the sale of the plushie goes back to the Disney Corporation down in America, but then we will demand of that $44. Actually, it will be $40 because there will be no sales tax on it. It'll just be a straight $40 fee for the plushie, and then $30. So for every plushie sold in Canada, Canada retains $12 worth of value, and America gets to decide, and Disney gets to decide with the remaining 70% how that gets allocated to do the inventory and pay the employees and how much extra money is going to the CEO's pocket and the board of directors. That's where Disney will take the 70% and decide what to do with it. The same way when I sell a game on Steam, and I'm charged 30% in taxes, I take that remaining $7 after all the conversion's done and decide what I want to do with it. And then I have to decide how to pay my employees when I have $4 coming in and my employees cost, I don't have any employees. That's why. Because I can't afford them. Because I would make, on the game sale, $4 of value, $3.66666 of value for a game that costs $10 to sell. So this is the counter tariff. Disney will take 30% of their ticket sales. So if it costs $100 to get in, $30 from that ticket sale sent directly back to the Canadian government. But this is why I propose defining a new tax bracket category, the Disney tax bracket, and it will operate on this principle. Why 30%? Because that is industry standard across the board for every tech company in America. Don't matter which one it is. So if 30% standard across the board is there for tech, why not make it there for taxes too? The employees will make 100% of their wage, because their wage will be determined by Disney using that remaining 70%. And then Disney will decide how much do we actually want to pay each individual employee, and how much do we want to pay the CEO and the board of directors, and how much does it cost for all the inventory restocking. And then Disney sets the price and decides how many people they have to hire to keep the park operational. And it's not going to come as a burden to them with a 40 or 50 or 60% income tax. It'll be a flat 30% fee on all sales tax. 30% sales tax is what I'm proposing. And then you take that sales tax, and this is the kicker, right? We'll go back to Walmart, and I'm going to do an analogy here. There's 100,000 people in Canada working for Walmart. There was another tab I had somewhere over here on a different page. Yeah. This, here we go. How much money does Walmart Canada make? So I asked this into the AI, and it told me that Walmart Canada reports net sales of $6.3 billion. So that would be their sales profit. And I further clarified, is that USD or CAD? So $6.3 billion, it stays. Walmart Inc. reports in US dollars. So I'm going to do that. I'm going to take 6.3, which is 63, 333, 333, 333. And then we're going to times, or we're going to say US dollars to CAD. How much is that? Okay. So we do this, and then we'll go like this, and 30% like there. And would you look at that? If we were to adopt this tax policy on American businesses operating in Canada, because we're providing what for them? The land and the infrastructure, the same way in the digital space, Steam provides me the land and the infrastructure for my game to exist. We provide the land and the infrastructure for Walmarts to exist in Canada. We say to Walmart, we're adding a tariff to Walmart of this 30%. On the flip side, they'll save money, because let's do a hypothetical. 100,000 employees. 100,000 employees. Let's say their average wage is 65,000 Canadian dollars. So this is how much money all the some collective people are making for Walmart, who work for Walmart, who live in Canada. So you take this number, right? And then what we're going to do with this is we're going to deduct the taxes of a Walmart employee. They're probably 25%. This is just a guess. 25%. So that would mean that based on the current tax system of paying taxes per hour of work per employee, American business Walmart is paying income tax to the federal government to the tune of $1.6 billion. But if we implemented this system and said, this is our tariff, this is how we win a trade war, this is our reverse proposal to Trump. Where is it here? Where is it? Oh, I lost my math tab. This is how I do math. I have 16 different tabs open in my Google browser, and I'm flipping between them in my head. So if Walmart is currently paying $1.6 billion in tax revenue to Canada, but we change the system to that flat 30% fee, it would go up to 2.6. Guess what? $2.6 billion in tax revenue would generate an additional $1 billion in tax revenue. But here's why the company will save money in the end long term. Because they don't have to hire an army of accountants on the side to do all of the taxes. If the taxes are per employee per hour, you have to calculate per employee per hour for the taxes. If the taxes is just how much money did you make, period, across the board for every good you sold over the last month in Canada, you just, okay, Every store, all 400 of them, how many goods did we sell? What was the profit? You take that number, take the 30% off of it, and you can run the entire accounting department with one person and an AI bot in their garage. You don't need an army of accountants to do all the accounting. Now, granted, will that mean accountants lose their job? Yeah, absolutely. I'm sorry you got to lose your job. If this were to happen, yes, if you're an accountant, this is going to fucking suck. Because one accountant can now run the entire accounting firm for all of Walmart Canada. Because it's not based on per hour per employee, it's based on the entire sales of all the goods across the board. And the employees pay $0 in taxes if the business you work for is grandfathered into Canada. If it already is here, operational and existing, you put the Disney tariff, the Disney tax bracket on them. You will exist in a separate category. Why? Because you are not a Canadian business. You are an American business that we have granted the opportunity to come to Canada and make money. And the reason that Walmart would agree to this, even if it means paying more money, $2.6 billion taken from their wealth versus $1.6 billion, because all $6.5 billion is going to be worth zero if the country goes bankrupt. It's that simple. So then you tell Walmart, well, I know you don't like it, you don't want to hear it, you're going to have to pay an extra $1 billion in taxes every year if we do this, but you're going to lose all $6.5 billion of revenue across the country if we go bankrupt, so you either take the loss or you take nothing. Because we're all being told we have to take nothing, and if we're going to be told we have to take nothing, then why are we subsidizing Walmart to 30% so they can hire immigrant workers? Oh yes, it's going to help the immigrant. Really? How does subsidizing Walmart, the wealthiest company on the freaking planet, help the immigrant worker? If they make $15 an hour, they make $15 an hour. It's $15 an hour. It doesn't matter where the money comes from. The money should not come from the taxpayer when it's an American company. So, every American company that's operating in Canada, my proposal, 30% flat tax across the board. If you're grandfathered in, maybe we'll make it 25. And then we can grow our economy through the tax system, because the tax system will make sense. And guess what? Every single employee is going to love it too. Oh. Why? Because they don't pay income tax. Their boss does. And it's not extortion, and it's not fuck the 1%. It's genuine business proposals. You want a business proposal? I think you want a tariff proposal, or we should tariff America. Oh yeah, that's going to work. Why don't you put a 30% tax on the American companies that are freely operating in Canada but extracting all of the money they make back to their corporate headquarters down south? Because otherwise, if the country goes bankrupt, they will lose 100% of the revenue they make here versus having to suck it up and, take 80 or 90% of what they used to make working and operating in Canada. So you have to work on the framing, the wording, how you put it forward. It's a pitch. But because it's a pitch, you can work on it and ideate and get better ideas and throw some ideas out as it goes along. And that's pretty radical to, go to Walmart and be like, oh, you could pay an extra $1 billion. You know what else is radical? Telling Canadians, yeah, you have to experience lower qualities of life because we failed. And I'm not going to take that. So I'm going to make more content, and I'm going to make more videos, and I'm going to explain to people math, and I'm going to explain to people facts, and I'm going to explain to people reality. We need a budget that is based on reality and numbers and facts, not emotion. This money is 100% emotionally based, because if they tried to take this out, it would cause a civil war. Because the Liberals will not budge on this issue. If they need, in their mind, $660 million for gender equality and pride stuff, but only $617 to secure the border, it tells you where their priority is, doesn't it? Their priority is diversity, not industry. And when the industries fail, go bankrupt and or pull out to America if they can, and you're left wondering where all the businesses are and where all the... We'll cancel that time so it doesn't go into another video. So there you have it. I've now explained to you in great and extensive detail why it is that businesses don't want to operate in Canada and why they're pulling out to America. And Canada, if you want that to change, then you need to change the tax law. Because allocating money internally and extracting it exponentially out is not telling me, the citizen, who I'm supposed to vote for when no one's told me any ideas on how to get new money in. But I got my Disney idea, and I'll be harping on that over the next week. And then it'll die on the cutting room floor. Or see where it goes. So, if you intend to continue to hear my rants about this and my plan going forward, I'll be dropping the budget next. 2 days in advance for you to look at and read. I will be doing an itemized, a line by line on the list, breakdown of everything that can be purchased with $10 billion of infrastructure, and hopefully Canadians will start to understand math, money, and that the power of the US dollar is practically infinite. And when I say infinite, just wait till the next video, man. Like, we've been planning this for months. So, thank you for listening to everything that I've had to say so far, or not, and we'll see you in the next video.